The empty self yearns to be filled by anything, and winds up being filled by everything. The beginning of the 20th century gave rise to the widespread consumptionism, which then oriented the self to be satiated by goods and services to maintain an identity. Philip Cushman writes, in his article Why the Self is Empty, that it is this consumerized identity that the state manipulates to secure an orderly society. Early public relations marketing utilized psychoanalysis to cater to the inner desires of men, women, and children with the development of engineered consent, a strategy perfected by Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud. All marketed products carried with them an implied emotional connection to identity, which shifted the market from a needs-based to a desires-based mentality. This way, individuals would perpetually seek fulfillment in new, flashy, and glamorous ways. For instance, in order to pronounce their masculinity in post-war America, a man was pressured to buy suits, cigarettes, and fancy cars. In order for women to accentuate their femininity, they must buy dresses, cooking equipment, and refrain from cigarettes, as it was too unseemly for women to indulge in such a masculine product. These items, for both men and women, carried with them an importance in establishing identity, but also in establishing prestige, signified by social stature. Soon, people came to the realization that their identity was more complex, and even in disagreement with how marketing represented their identity. As the humanistic paradigm emerged and shadowed psychodynamic and behavioristic thought with a new and refreshing, positive, individualistic perspective, fixed identity marketing became obsolete. The appetite of the self became concerned with uniqueness and originality. Business would cater their products to fulfill the new need for self-expression. Politics would also shift as democracy recognizes that the empty self is one that can be filled by anything. What goes in is chosen not by the self, but by the external environment. When filled by institutions, it is no longer democracy, but rather a strange form of tyranny. The self has been seized again. Humanistic positive psychology recognizes that the self is hungry, but this particular paradigm also recognizes that humans possess an incredible ability to seek self-actualization and make meaning. The reality of our society is bleak if we fail to recognize what actually matters. Flourishing, as Martin Seligman describes, is a lifestyle that emphasizes positive emotion, engagement, positive relationships, meaning-making, and recognizes positive accomplishment. To take to heart the facets of flourishing requires a rejection of commodified society. It requires seeking out what is life-giving, not what is life-draining. Furthermore, it requires a bold intentionality that cuts through illusions of satisfaction, only to settle on what can truly lead to a life rich with wellness. Life is not meant to be lived in selfish seclusion. It's meant to be lived in an abundance of spirit, with those who matter most, such that any storm can be weathered, and then the day can be celebrated. In conclusion, it is imperative we consider the self as empty, with the propensity to crave fulfillment by any means. Simple or complex, artifacts of fulfillment present themselves eager to be consumed. We must take heed and be cautious of what we consume. Both Cushman and Postman waved the signal flags denouncing the temptations of instant gratification, the disillusion of truth, and hollow means to gangly ends. They evoke the emotion of caution and awareness that our society is saturated with commodities. To consume these goods and services reinforces a reality and an identity that fails to persist over time. The cycle presents itself with the likes of the symbolic, grueling Ouroboros, one that is doomed to perpetually consume itself. To be aware is to seek other means of making meaning, not of what can be gained from others, but what can I give. To be aware is to call into question whether or not we are capable of giving despite a society, a culture, and a world that wills us to consume. Therefore, the nature of fulfillment is not about receiving, but rather about the willingness to give. From there, much joy can be derived. Thank you. Stay curious.